Welcome to the CopyCompile video walkthrough. My name is Chris. I'll be walking you guys through the application and breaking it down into 3 sections: why you need CopyCompile, what it is, and how you actually use it. So in the first section, why you need CopyCompile. CopyCompile originally came to me as an idea where I noticed note-taking was not very efficient for me. I was reading very long ebooks, which I'll get into shortly, and I noticed that the only processes that were available for me to take notes were very time-consuming and they weren't very efficient. So I developed CopyCompile, which has helped me to significantly increase the speed and efficiency that I can take notes. So why you need CopyCompile? CopyCompile is going to boost your note-taking speed by 30 to 50%. It's going to allow you to take more efficient notes, and we're talking half the time with half the effort. And one thing with note-taking a lot of people don't realize is they're constantly multitasking when they're taking notes. So they're reading the source they're taking notes from, and then they're moving on to their note-taking software to put notes into. And multitasking reduces productivity by up to 40%. With CopyCompile, you're able to get rid of the whole notion of multitasking, and you're able to take notes while you're reading. So it'll make a little more sense when we get into what the app actually does. One other thing is there's an abundance of information. So everywhere you go, every book you read, every article you read, every website you go to, there's all this information, and we want to sift through this information and pull out what's most important to us. You know, for me, I was reading 300-page ebooks, and all 300 pages are not relevant. I get maybe 10 pages of notes out of the 300 pages. So I want to be able to take those 10 pages out in the most convenient fashion possible. So my story was I was reading these long PDFs. So for instance, we're going to use Dan Kennedy's Ultimate Sales Letter as an example. And I noticed there were a couple different ways to take notes, but none of them really seem that efficient. So you can split screen, and I'll show you guys what I mean by that. So you have your note-taking application, and then you have the actual book that you're reading. And with that, split screening, you are essentially, you've got your eyes on the page here, and you're reading along, and then maybe you copy and paste your notes in as you go through. So you're constantly having to leave the page on the left side, leave the ebook, and then go into your note-taking software, and you're essentially multitasking. You're having to constantly take your focus off the book in order to get to the note-taking section to add your notes. So I felt like that was not efficient for my time. So the other way was tabbing back and forth, and this is essentially the same thing, except now we have the full screen visible, so we're able to read more on the page here, but still we're having to constantly go off the page, tab back in, find our place again, and you're still multitasking. You're still wasting a lot of time. So the other way was, well, maybe we just handwrite notes, but that takes really long, and you can't search through your handwritten notes, and that's also taking your eyes off the page as well. So the final way that I had come up with was highlighting text. So I would go through this PDF, and I would highlight each section that I felt was important as I read it, and I would go back in and read the book again and find all of these highlights and start pulling them out and putting them into notes. And I found that that was not useful either, because you have to read this entire book again and go through all of the highlights when you're done. So that process wasn't efficient either. So then CopyCompile was developed. So CopyCompile allows you to save time, stay focused, and take smoother, faster, and more efficient notes. So what is CopyCompile? CopyCompile is a note-taking application. It's a productivity tool, and more importantly, a clipboard manager. And it can be used for PDFs, case studies, articles, blogs, ebooks, and more. pretty much anywhere where you can copy and highlight text, or where you can use snipping tool, window snipping tool, to capture an image on a screen. CopyCompile can capture that data in a full-formed list, and you can export it all at once. So you're able to copy large quantities of data and then export it as a whole. So when you think traditionally with note-taking, you're copying one piece of data and then pasting it into your note-taking software, or you're tabbing into a section of your notes and maybe summarizing a sentence, summarizing a paragraph, and then you're going back into the notes. So you're constantly having to go back and forth. Well, CopyCompile, you're able to conveniently and efficiently capture those notes as you're reading, so you don't have to constantly be going back and forth and writing notes down. Instead, you can list those notes, compile all of the information, and then paste it all once you're done. So again, there's an abundance of information, and CopyCompile helps you to sift through and compile what's important in a faster and more convenient way. Traditional note-taking requires inefficient multitasking. You're split screening, you're going back and forth, you're tabbing, you're highlighting. You're not focused on what you're reading, and you're constantly taking your eyes off the page. Whereas with CopyCompile, you're able to keep your eyes on the page, continue reading what's important, and taking notes and capturing useful information without actually having to leave the page, without having to do anything else. You don't have to tab, you don't have to switch screens, you don't have to look down and write notes. You can just highlight and capture the information that you need. So how do you use CopyCompile? I'm going to take you through a walkthrough of the basic features, and using CopyCompile, using snipping tool to capture more than just text, where you can capture actual images and screenshots, using the notepad where you can summarize and take your own notes instead of just copying and pasting information, and the exporting features where you can actually export your notes out into a Word document, a PDF document, or into your own note-taking software, such as Evernote or Microsoft OneNote, which is what I'll show you guys today. And last but not least, you can check out the user manual, which is attached to this email, for further details on all of the shortcuts, all of the walkthroughs, and all the information, including extra features related to CopyCompile. So this video is just going to be a quick walkthrough, and I'm not going to go into full detail, but everything is in the user manual. Alright guys, so this is CopyCompile. Here we go. You want to make sure that this is recording, so you want to make sure this is red where you can see the stop button. This means that CopyCompile is currently capturing data. So that's all that you're really going to need to know for now. You can actually minimize CopyCompile from here, and you can go into the notes or whatever you're reading, and you can start capturing information. So we're going to start with Dan Kennedy, Ultimate Sales Letter. This is a 206-page PDF. So just to put into context, imagine reading this and trying to take notes from it. How many times you would have to tab back and forth or look down to write some comments, or to, just take notes in general. How much of a pain it would be from 200 pages to, maybe get 10 pages of notes out of this. With CopyCompile, it's running in the background right now. So we can start highlighting information that's useful to us. And you can't see it here, but I just hit Control-C, which is essentially the copy command, and I captured this data, which was being added to CopyCompile. CopyCompile is compiling a list of all of these copy commands that I'm using, and it's sending it to CopyCompile's clipboard. So as I read this PDF, I can go through all 200 pages and I can capture the information that's useful for me from the book, and CopyCompile is going to store it as we read the book. I don't have to leave the page, I don't have to tab back and forth, and I can simply copy all of this information that I want as I read through, and you can see right here all of the data is being captured. Every time I hit Control-C, every time I highlight and copy data, it gets added to the clipboard manager. So some people might say, oh, okay, well, that's great, but what if you get to this? Let's say you get to an image. How do we capture an image? CopyCompile is only recording highlighted text. It's only copying. That's all it's doing. Well, we have the window snipping tool set up, and I have a hotkey, which is talked about further in the user manual. But essentially, I press 2 keystrokes, capture the part of the screen that I want, and it's automatically added to CopyCompile. So we now have an image added to this list. And you can see it in the export preview. If we go to page 2, the image is in there. So not only are we capturing text, but we're able to capture images as well and compile it into our note-taking list, our compilation of notes. So we can continue reading and continue adding these notes as we go through the book. I'm just hitting Control-C here to capture information. And again, we'll find some more images. And from here, I'm going to use the same shortcut code. And once again, it's in the user manual if you want to know how I'm doing the shortcut code and capturing a screenshot so conveniently, so simply. But there it is again. And you can see it now on page 3 in the export preview. So essentially, we're going through and we're able to capture all of this data without having to ever leave the ebook. So this makes note-taking significantly faster. Now, some people will say, well, that's great, but what if I want to take my own notes? What if I want to paraphrase? What if I want to write, not word for word as it's listed, but I want to write my own notes? One thing you can do is CopyCompile has a notepad, and we're currently working on the global hotkey so that you can open this and access it while you're in your PDF, your website, whatever it may be. And you can toggle this with a hotkey. So this comes up, and let's say I want to paraphrase. Well, we can paraphrase here and write whatever notes we want to add to CopyCompile, and simply highlight and copy it into the list. So we grab that, we can use select all feature here, we can cut it, and we can close it, and it's now added here to CopyCompile. So when we're done with all of this, we can export. So we have our notes here. Let's say we read 100 pages or whatever it may be. We may read the whole ebook, we may only read a chapter, and we grab all the information that's useful. There's a couple of options here. We can stop recording, and we can export directly to different file types here. So CCX is actually CopyCompile's own file type, where you can reopen this if you save it as CCX and have this list still compiled in CopyCompile. You can export directly to Excel, PDF, or a Word document. So we're going to do a Word document just for testing purposes to show you guys what it looks like. And let that export right there. And there's all the notes that we took. So another thing too, and what I like to do personally, is I will use Microsoft OneNote. And you can't export directly to OneNote. It's more of an open source style of writing. So you build your own notebook. You build a virtual notebook essentially. So I'll highlight this, copy the entire list, and then I'll paste it in here. And one thing we need to make sure when we paste is that we paste with source formatting so that it gets saved with the images and all of the formatting that we have set up. So when you look in the user manual, you'll see that source formatting is going to be based on this. So you can set up a pre-selected font style, size, color, and every time you take notes, it will be predetermined to fit this certain criteria that's set up for us. There's a lot of other options in here that I won't necessarily walk into, as you don't need to really know all of them, but there's a page setup so you can adjust margins if you wanted to print directly, print option. There's a couple of different settings here. Ignore line breaks, which I have also discussed in the user manual. That essentially makes it so that this is all connected as a sentence instead of line breaking like it will here, where this ends because the page isn't long enough and then the sentence starts in the next line. Ignore line breaks will ignore the fact that this broke into the next line, and it will put it all together in one sentence. But yeah, this is CopyCompile. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm going to do a speed run right after this to show you guys without me talking, just kind of running through and comparing how long it takes to compile notes from a PDF document with the traditional way versus CopyCompile's way. So I'll run that next and you guys can check that out. Otherwise, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed and enjoy the beta testing.